Before the story begins, take a second to anchor this channel in your memory. If you enjoy sci-fi where humanity survives through grit, compassion, and unexpected dominance, tap like, subscribe for more HFY stories, and tell me in the comments which alien species you think would fear humans the most. Now let's begin. The mercenary station of Karen's Drift floated at the edge of mapped space like a scar that refused to heal. Welded plates from a dozen civilizations overlapped its hull, each layer earned through battle, betrayal, or desperate retreat. It was not a place built for comfort or mercy. It was a place where contracts ended lives and weakness was recycled into vacuum. That was why the laughter followed Elias Ward wherever he walked. He moved through the central corridor with a medical pack slung over one shoulder, boots echoing softly against steel scarred by plasma burns. Compared to the others, he looked unfinished. No reinforced exoskeleton. No visible weapons beyond a compact sidearm he rarely touched. His body bore no obvious enhancements, no fangs, claws, or armored plating. Just a human man in worn field gear, eyes steady, posture calm. "Clear the way," a hulking Brakari mercenary snarled as it shoved past him, shoulder plates scraping the wall. "Wouldn't want the healer bruised." The surrounding aliens chuckled. Some made sounds Elias's translator rendered as amusement, others as disdain. A few didn't bother masking their contempt at all. To them, healers were tools at best and liabilities at worst. Useful only after the killing stopped. Elias didn't respond. He stepped aside, letting the Brakari pass, and continued on his route. A medical alert pulsed on his wrist, guiding him toward one of the auxiliary hangars where a skirmish had ended minutes earlier. 2 wounded mercenaries lay inside, bleeding fluids that changed color as they hit the deck. He knelt beside the first without hesitation, deploying instruments with practiced efficiency. His hands moved with confidence born from years spent in worse places than this. The alien's breathing stabilized within seconds. "Human," the second mercenary hissed, mandibles flexing in pain. "If I die, I haunt you." Elias glanced up, met the creature's multifaceted eyes, and allowed the faintest smile. "If you die, you won't. Hold still." Minutes later, both were alive. Neither thanked him. By the time Elias exited the hangar, the laughter had returned, louder now that blood no longer distracted them. A group of mercenaries lounged near the mess intake, trophies hanging from their armor. One, a lean predator species with serrated crests, tilted his head as Elias passed. "You ever wonder why you're still here, human?" he asked. "No one hires muscle to carry bandages." Elias stopped. Slowly, deliberately, he turned to face them. The corridor quieted, curiosity sharpening the air. "I'm here because you keep coming back alive," he said. "That's not luck." The predator barked a laugh. Confidence from a medic. Cute. Elias didn't argue. He resumed walking, leaving behind smirks and shaking heads. To them, his calm read as ignorance. They did not see the calculations behind his eyes or the discipline in his measured breathing. At the station's outer ring, a reinforced bulkhead sealed off a private docking spur. Security cameras were positioned to look outward, never inward. Elias paused there, placing his palm against a biometric panel. The door opened just wide enough for him to slip through. Beyond it lay silence. The small bay was dim, lights dialed low. Scorch marks pitted the floor, and deep grooves scarred the walls as if something enormous had once struggled there. Elias crossed the space and knelt beside a massive form resting in shadow. Only the slow, rhythmic rise of its flank betrayed that it slept. He removed a ration pack, tore it open, and placed the contents carefully on a reinforced plate. A low sound resonated through the bay, felt more than heard. The creature shifted, a single eye opening to regard him. "It's quiet tonight," Elias murmured. "That's good." The eye closed again. Trust, absolute and unspoken, settled between them. Moments later, an alarm blared across the station. "Combat alert. Incoming hostiles." Elias stood, his expression unchanged, and touched the communicator band at his wrist. It bore scars older than his posting here, its surface etched by claws rather than tools. As he exited the bay, the laughter from earlier echoed faintly in his memory. The mercenaries were already mobilizing, eager for battle, confident in their strength. None of them noticed the subtle vibration rippling through the station's frame, or the way distant sensors briefly flickered before stabilizing. Elias joined the flow toward the armory, healer's pack secured, heart steady. He had warned them before, quietly, without drama. They had not listened. Soon they would understand why humans did not need to look dangerous to be lethal, and why mocking a healer was the last mistake many species ever made. The incoming message from the syndicate arrived as a pulse through the station's secure network, terse and imperious. A contract had been placed on Karen's drift, tagged with a bounty high enough to bankrupt half a dozen mercenary guilds. The aliens who dominated the corridors barely glanced at it, dismissing it as another petty power play among distant councils. Elias Ward read the translation once, then set the device aside. Danger was not something you ignored, it was something you anticipated. The mercenaries had already begun their usual posturing, flexing armor plates and sharpening energy blades with casual arrogance. One of the Brakari, the same hulking mercenary who had shoved past Elias before, barked a challenge to the others. Let them come. The human won't survive a week outside these walls anyway. Laughter followed, high-pitched and grating, echoing off the bulkhead like static. Elias did not respond. He moved through the corridors as always, surveying the wounded and distributing medical rations, his focus unbroken. His calm demeanor contrasted sharply with the adrenaline-fueled arrogance of the station's warriors. Even now, the alien mercenaries treated him as if he were a liability, an accessory to their violence rather than a necessary force. The first strike came without warning. The sensors screamed, warning of incoming craft weaving through the outer perimeter. Missiles tore through the void, detonating against the outer shields with a flash that painted the corridors in sharp light. The mercenaries scrambled, armor clanging, weapons flaring. In the chaos, one of the alien leaders, a lithe, crested predator, looked at Elias with derision. This is your moment, human. Show us you're worth the air you breathe. Elias's reply was simple. He secured his medical pack and followed the emergency routes, his eyes scanning for injured personnel. Within moments he was kneeling beside a scorched Brakari, its limbs twisted beneath fallen beams. The creature growled in pain, trying to resist the restraints of gravity and injury. Elias's hands moved with precision, stabilizing fractures, sealing ruptured vessels and administering stim injections. You're going to survive, he said, his voice low but firm. No matter what you think about me, you will survive. The Brakari blinked in disbelief. The Predator leader had already advanced toward the airlock, intent on engaging the attackers outside, leaving Elias exposed. Other mercenaries followed, confident in their superior firepower. They left the human behind, expecting him to be collateral damage. Minutes stretched into an eternity. Through the reinforced windows, Elias could see the chaos of the battle unfolding, enemy craft skimming dangerously close, lasers cutting trails across the station's hull, alien soldiers diving into cover or returning fire with brutal efficiency. In the center of it all, Elias remained focused on the wounded, ignoring the shouts, the explosions and the smoke that clawed at the vents. A sudden impact shook the corridor. Debris rained down, narrowly missing Elias as he stabilized a gasping Krithan soldier. The creature's multi-jointed limbs twitched uncontrollably in fear, but Elias's steady hands calmed it. Focus on breathing, he instructed. One breath at a time. You're stronger than this moment. Through the haze of panic, the Predator mercenary from earlier returned, his expression dark with fury. Why are you still alive? I told you, humans cannot survive this. Elias glanced up calmly, unshaken by the accusation or the threat. Humans survive because we adapt. Because we endure. Not because we dominate. He adjusted a brace on the soldier's arm, ignoring the alien's incredulous stare. If you need someone to fight, I can help, but not in the way you expect. The mercenary barked a sharp laugh and turned back toward the fray. Elias finished his work, hauling the injured toward the temporary triage zone. As he moved, the vibrations of the station grew heavier, a subtle but unmistakable resonance underfoot. Something beyond the perimeter had stirred. Elias stopped at the edge of the hangar bay, resting a hand on the communicator band etched with scars from years past. He pressed a sequence of commands, quiet and deliberate, and spoke a single word into the bracelet. Now. The station shuddered. The mercenaries paused, uneasy, sensing something they could not see. Even those caught in the battle outside felt a ripple through the hull. The air seemed to thicken, charged with anticipation. Whispers ran through the ranks, a low hum of fear mixed with confusion. One of the younger Predators, a wiry scout with eyes too large for its skull, hesitated mid-stride. Do you feel that? It asked, voice trembling. Something's coming. Elias did not answer. He only moved to the center of the hangar, standing among the injured and the panicked mercenaries alike. Come. Steady. Unseen yet undeniably present, the tension coalesced around him. The station trembled again, stronger this time, as if the very foundations of the structure acknowledged his summons. Outside, in the dark expanse beyond reinforced shields, something immense shifted. Sensors flagged it, but no human or alien eye could capture the full scale of the movement. Only the vibrations, subtle and terrifying, hinted at the force approaching the station. The mercenaries exchanged uneasy glances, their earlier confidence faltering under the weight of an unspoken dread. They had mocked him, ignored his warnings, and now, in the crucible of battle, they began to realize that Elias Ward was not a simple healer. He was a pivot on which the fate of their station balanced, and they had no comprehension of the power tethered to him. Elias's eyes remained steady, scanning the perimeter, assessing threats, calculating survival. He did not need to see the creature to command attention. He only needed to summon it. A low vibration, growing into a resonant pulse, traveled through the station, shaking plates, rattling equipment, and sending the bravest mercenaries to their knees. In the distance, a shadow emerged beyond the reinforced shields, massive and deliberate. The attackers faltered, sensing the presence before it fully revealed itself. Elias glanced back at the mercenaries, his calmness almost unbearable in contrast to the fear rising around them. "You mocked me," he said softly, more to himself than to them. "You will see why that was a mistake." The corridor erupted with movement, alarms blaring, and the mercenaries now fully aware that the tide of this engagement would not be decided by their weapons or cunning alone. Elias had called, and something far beyond their comprehension was answering. The station, once a theater of mockery and arrogance, had shifted, and every being within it would feel the consequences. And in that moment, the line between predator and healer blurred, leaving only the inevitability of what was coming. The station shuddered again, a deep, resonant pulse that rolled through the bulkheads like the heartbeat of some colossal beast. Outside the reinforced shields, the darkness shifted. Shapes that had once been only shadows now resolved into something immense, impossibly large, moving with a purpose that defied expectation. The mercenaries froze mid-action, their weapons raised but trembling in their grasp. Elias Ward did not flinch. He moved calmly through the corridor, adjusting a medical brace on a gasping Krithan soldier, his eyes tracking the faint vibrations that heralded what was approaching. Around him, fear blossomed like fire through dry kindling. Laughter, mocking and arrogant, had long since died, replaced by tension that hummed in every joint and nerve of the mercenaries. The first glimpse came through the observation port. A shadow detached itself from the void, massive enough to blot out starlight, yet sleek and muscular, every line of its form a testament to raw power and precision. Its head was crowned with ridged plates, eyes luminous with intelligence rather than instinct, and limbs coiled like springs ready to strike. It moved with a grace that contradicted its size, deliberate and controlled, calculating rather than mindless. The mercenary leader who had mocked Elias before stepped forward, jaw tightening. What is that thing?" His voice shook, and the bravado he had worn like armor fell away. Elias did not answer immediately. Instead, he stepped toward the hangar's edge, raising a hand in a subtle gesture, almost imperceptible. The creature halted in its approach, tilting its massive head, listening, recognizing the signal. A silent acknowledgement passed between human and predator, a bond forged through trust, care, and years of quiet understanding. The attackers beyond the shields did not have that bond. They surged forward, energy weapons blazing, confident that sheer firepower would secure victory. The creature responded not with panic, not with uncontrolled rage, but with precision. A sweep of its clawed limbs dismantled an enemy craft before it could reach firing range. Shockwaves rolled through the vacuum as debris tumbled, each movement calculated, every strike deliberate. Inside the station, mercenaries pressed against walls, unable to comprehend the magnitude of what they were witnessing. Even those accustomed to the horrors of deep space conflict felt their courage falter. The Predator's presence dominated the battlefield without a single roar or bellow, its intelligence as palpable as its power. Elias moved calmly among them, tending the injured, adjusting medkits, stabilizing panic. He spoke quietly, almost conversationally, to the creature as he worked. "Slow, controlled. Not theirs. Only mine." The Predator obeyed, executing movements that seemed almost ritualistic, sweeping enemies aside but sparing those under Elias's immediate care. One of the alien mercenaries, a wiry scout with eyes too large for its skull, scrambled toward Elias, voice trembling. It's not attacking indiscriminately." How does it know?" Elias did not look up from his work. "Because it trusts me," he said simply. "And I trust it. That bond is all it needs. That bond is everything." Outside, the attackers realized too late that they had misjudged the engagement. The Predator anticipated every maneuver, cutting off escape routes, dismantling boarding pods, neutralizing the most heavily armed squads before they could react. Each alien that survived the initial strikes fled in terror, their confidence shattered. What had begun as a routine strike now became a retreat under the shadow of a single, overwhelming presence. Inside the station, a Brakari mercenary who had once mocked Elias fell to its knees. Mandibles trembling, it whispered, "Human," he called it. It came. No one dared correct the pronouncement. The fear in the eyes of seasoned warriors spoke volumes. Elias Ward, healer and human, had summoned a force no mercenary or enemy could confront alone. The Predator, sensing the shift, retracted slightly, coiling its massive form near the station's core. It watched Elias with an attentiveness that bordered on reverence. Even in the midst of chaos, it obeyed his commands with fluid obedience, sparing allies, focusing on threats. It was no longer merely a weapon. It was a sentinel, an extension of the human who had earned its trust. Elias straightened, stepping into the open space between the Predator and the mercenaries. The tension was palpable, the air thick with unspoken questions. "This is what happens when you mistake care for weakness," he said softly, voice carrying over the quaking floor. "Strength comes in many forms. Some you can see. Some, you cannot until it answers your call." The remaining attackers hesitated at the edge of the shield, uncertain whether to press forward or retreat. The Predator's gaze, intelligent and unyielding, fixed upon them, and the decision was made for them. They withdrew, leaving the station silent save for the low hum of emergency systems and the distant echo of their retreating engines. Inside, the mercenaries slowly turned their attention toward Elias. Confusion, awe, and a dawning respect replaced the fear. The ones who had mocked him before stood stiffly, unsure whether to kneel or step back. Their perception of humans, of healers, and of strength itself had shifted irrevocably. Elias moved among them, checking the pulse of the injured, his presence calm and steady. The Predator settled beside him, enormous yet obedient, a living testament to the bond that had turned the tide. The creatures that had once dismissed him now understood that they were not the apex force on the station. That title belonged elsewhere, bonded, intelligent, and entirely human-guided. A young Predator mercenary stepped forward, voice small but resolute. I underestimated you. I see now, what we thought fragile can command what we cannot." Elias allowed a brief nod but said nothing more. Words were unnecessary. The lesson had been taught in motion, in precision, in the quiet dominance of loyalty and trust. As the station settled into cautious quiet, Elias looked toward the outer bay where the Predator rested, its massive form coiled like a shadow that had learned patience. The battle had been won, not through firepower or intimidation, but through a bond that no mercenary had dared imagine. The story of this day would ripple across the sector, whispered and feared, marking the emergence of a human whose influence exceeded the limitations of biology and reputation. Elias's voice cut through the silence, soft yet carrying the weight of command. "Stay close. Nothing ends here unless I say so." The Predator shifted, a subtle acknowledgement, and the mercenaries realized that survival now depended not on their strength, but on understanding the human who had called something greater into being. And somewhere beyond the station's shields, something even larger stirred, sensing the resonance of loyalty and command. The Predator had answered the call, but the ripple it left behind promised that this was only the beginning. The human had not yet revealed the full extent of what could follow. The aftermath of the battle left Karen's drift in an eerie stillness, punctuated only by the hum of damaged systems and the occasional hiss of venting coolant. Debris littered the corridors, scorched marks traced the path of the attacker's retreat, and the air smelled faintly of ozone and burnt alloys. The mercenaries moved cautiously now, their previous arrogance replaced with a tentative respect that neither had been earned nor requested. Elias Ward walked among them with the Predator at his side, a silent colossus coiled like living armor. Its massive head dipped slightly as he passed, eyes glimmering with awareness and a loyalty that no words could fully describe. The other creatures sensed it too. Even seasoned warriors with centuries of experience understood instinctively that this bond was not to be challenged. The first to break the silence was the Brakari mercenary who had mocked Elias most openly. Mandibles clicking nervously, it approached, each step hesitant. "You saved me." "After I..." The words faltered as the Predator shifted, a subtle movement of mass that reminded him who truly commanded the space. Elias looked at the creature, then back at the mercenary. "Go on," he prompted quietly. You survived. And it obeyed you, the mercenary stammered. How? Why? Elias straightened, glancing toward the bay where the predator rested its weight against the reinforced floor. Because I healed it, he said simply. Years ago I found it wounded, left for dead. I could have left it to suffer or ended its life. I chose to care for it. That choice built trust, and trust is stronger than fear or intimidation. A low murmur spread among the gathered mercenaries. Their eyes, once sharp with contempt, now searched his face for something more tangible, some trick or technology they could dismiss. There was none. The human who had been mocked, underestimated, and left exposed had built an alliance that no mercenary guild could match. One of the younger predator scouts, still trembling from the shock of the battle, asked in a quiet voice, "So, it follows you because you healed it?" Elias nodded. "Yes. And it will follow me as long as I act with reason, with care. It does not serve me blindly. It recognizes judgment, intelligence, and respect. Those are the terms of its loyalty." The station settled into cautious routine, injuries tended, systems repaired, and the mercenaries beginning to comprehend that their prior assumptions about humans had been disastrously flawed. Elias moved among them, calm and unhurried, his actions reinforcing the lesson his words had begun. He stabilized broken limbs, administered stim injections, and reassured those shaken by fear. The predator, massive yet restrained, observed silently, its presence a constant reminder of what humans could achieve not through dominance but through understanding and care. Mercenaries who had once mocked him now skirted close, careful not to disturb the creature yet drawn to Elias's composure. It became clear that its obedience was selective, given freely to him, withheld from all others. "Why didn't you fight back before calling it?" one mercenary asked, curiosity edging out fear. Elias adjusted a medkit strap across his shoulder. "Because violence without strategy is meaningless. Strength is not in the ability to destroy, but in knowing when to act and who to trust. You would have learned nothing if I had simply fought for you." A senior mercenary, still breathing heavily from the ambush, muttered, "We judged you. Mocked you. Thought you weak." "You did," Elias said, his tone even. "And that was your mistake. Weakness is not what you perceive. It is what you fail to understand. Humans endure, adapt, and survive in ways others cannot imagine. I do not seek to dominate, but those who threaten the balance learn quickly that we are not powerless." The mercenaries absorbed the lesson in silence, some too humbled to speak, others too wary. Even the skeptics began to comprehend that their understanding of strength had been incomplete. Elias's quiet competence, coupled with the predator's awe-inspiring loyalty, had rewritten the rules of engagement. One of the alien medics, a Krithan with multi-limbed dexterity, asked, "Will it always obey you?" Elias paused, glancing at the creature. "It will obey as long as I act rightly. Its loyalty is earned daily, not commanded. Trust is not a one-time transaction. And the moment that trust is broken, it will not hesitate to act against me, or anyone else who misuses it." The predator's massive form shifted, coiling protectively around Elias. The gesture was both reassurance and warning, a physical manifestation of the bond they shared. The mercenaries who had once derided him understood then that the human was more than a healer. He was a strategist, a guardian, and a master of an alliance that defied conventional power. Elias moved to the observation deck, surveying the perimeter. The enemy forces had retreated, but sensors still detected residual activity. He spoke softly to the predator, voice calm and controlled. "Remain close. Nothing ends here that I do not allow. We prepare, we observe, and we endure. That is the only way to survive this sector." The mercenaries lingered at the edge of the deck, their earlier bravado extinguished, replaced by a wary respect. Elias's presence and the predator's silent dominance had shifted the balance of authority. He had not commanded through fear. He had demonstrated through action, through intelligence, and through the quiet strength of compassion. A young scout whispered, almost reverently, "Humans, maybe we underestimated them entirely." Elias allowed a faint nod, a recognition of the thought without interrupting the reflection. Strength was not always visible, and he had spent years cultivating an understanding that few could replicate. The predator beside him was living proof of that philosophy, a sentinel of loyalty and power bound by choice rather than coercion. As the station settled into a tense calm, Elias returned to tending the wounded, the mercenaries now following his instructions with a mixture of caution and curiosity. The battle had ended, but the lessons it imparted were only beginning to take root. Humans were not to be dismissed, and Elias Ward had ensured that his station, his allies, and even his enemies understood that fact. And yet, somewhere beyond the outer shields, The remnants of the attackers lingered, sensing the resonance of the bond they had underestimated. The Predator had answered the call, but the echo of that answer promised that the story of Elias Ward and the alliance he commanded was far from over. The human who had been mocked, ignored, and underestimated had emerged not just as a healer, but as a force whose influence would ripple through the stars. The station hummed with a quiet tension, a stark contrast to the chaos that had engulfed it just hours before. Mercenaries moved deliberately, repairing equipment, tending to minor injuries, and exchanging furtive glances at the enormous Predator coiled near the central deck. Elias Ward walked among them with measured steps, each movement deliberate, his presence commanding yet unassuming. He carried no visible weapons beyond his medkit, yet every mercenary knew that the man who had summoned a creature of unimaginable power was no ordinary human. The Predator's head lifted as he approached, eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. It moved with a fluid grace, coiling tighter around him as if sensing his focus and intention. The bond between them was evident, a silent language of gestures, subtle sounds, and unspoken commands. The mercenaries who had once mocked him now kept their distance, instinctively understanding that this human's authority extended beyond mere survival. It shaped the reality of power itself. A council of the station's senior mercenaries gathered near the observation deck, their armored forms tense. The Brakari leader, still recovering from the ambush, stepped forward, his mandibles clattering nervously. "Human, you've changed everything." The Predator, "How did you come to command such a force?" Elias did not flinch. He regarded them evenly, his calm demeanor betraying none of the pride swelling quietly inside him. "Command is the wrong word. It is not obedience I seek. It is partnership. Strength is never singular, it is earned through understanding, care, and respect. That is the difference between fear and loyalty." The mercenaries murmured among themselves, comprehension dawning slowly. Even those hardened by centuries of mercenary life recognized the truth of his words. Elias had rewritten the code of survival in the sector, not through intimidation, but through principles they had dismissed as weaknesses. A young scout, previously skeptical and now wide-eyed with awe, asked, "So humans can bind creatures far beyond our comprehension?" Elias's lips curved into a faint smile. "Not bind. Align. Trust is not enforced, it is chosen. And it is far stronger than any chain, shield, or weapon." Outside the station, distant sensors picked up a new movement. Smaller ships scuttling hesitantly near the outer perimeter, remnants of the enemy fleet testing the waters. They had learned caution, but they did not yet understand the true cost of underestimating a human and the being he had allied with. Elias's focus shifted briefly to the observation panel, reading the faint signals of movement, then returned to the mercenaries. "They will probe, test us. They will measure what they do not understand. Our response must be measured as well." The Predator rose slightly, muscles coiling like tense springs. Every mercenary present instinctively stepped back, feeling the weight of a power they could neither confront nor ignore. The creature's gaze locked with Elias's, a silent exchange of assurance passing between them. It would act, but only under his guidance. The station's intercom crackled with new alerts, incoming transmissions from distant guilds, news of the battle and the Predator's intervention spreading faster than any formal report could. The sector was abuzz with rumors. A human had survived attacks, summoned an apex predator, and reshaped the dynamics of power on Charon's Drift. Elias knew these whispers would ripple further, altering perceptions and rewriting assumptions about humans forever. As night fell across the station, the Predator coiled around the central hub, its immense form both sentinel and companion. Elias moved among the mercenaries, checking wounds, adjusting braces, and offering quiet guidance. In every gesture, he demonstrated mastery over both the environment and the alliances he had forged. Those who had laughed at him now followed his direction instinctively, aware that their survival hinged on understanding rather than dominance. Suddenly, the sensors flared again, this time larger vessels approaching, faster and more coordinated than before. The enemy had regrouped, determined to challenge the station once more. The mercenaries froze, uncertain, eyes darting toward Elias for guidance. He took a deep breath, his gaze steady. "They do not yet comprehend what binds us. They see only size and weaponry. We will show them intelligence, strategy, and resolve. Stand ready but trust in what you cannot fully see. You are not alone in this." The Predator shifted, rising to its full height, muscles rippling, eyes fixed on the approaching fleet. The mercenaries instinctively fell into formation around Elias, their roles clear, their trust earned through action rather than words. A moment of silence fell over the station, heavy and charged with anticipation. Elias stepped to the edge of the observation deck, raising his hand in the subtle signal that had called the predator before. It moved instantly, a shadow of motion so fluid it was almost invisible, striking through the corridor toward the outer bay. The approaching ships paused, sensors detecting a presence far larger than expected, something intelligent, precise, and utterly lethal. "Remember," Elias said, voice carrying with calm authority, "strength is not measured by fear, but by the trust others place in you and the decisions you make in that trust." The predator unleashed its first strike, and the enemy's confidence shattered in an instant. The station shook as energy blasts redirected, hull sections cracked under precise, overwhelming force. Mercenaries watched in awe, their disbelief turning into an understanding they could not articulate. Elias had summoned not just a weapon, but an extension of strategy, intelligence, and loyalty. The apex predator moved as if it were part of him, each strike guided by years of trust and subtle communication. The enemy fleet faltered, then broke, retreating under the weight of a force they could not counter. The station's alarms quieted, the corridors settled, and a new respect solidified among the surviving mercenaries. Elias exhaled, finally allowing himself a faint smile as he returned to the central deck. The predator coiled beside him once more, immense and obedient, a living testament to what care, understanding, and human resilience could achieve. The mercenaries, now silent and wary, recognized the full measure of what they had witnessed. One of the Brakari leaders spoke, voice low and reverent. "We mocked you, we thought humans weak. We were wrong." Elias nodded. "Strength takes many forms. Today you have seen one of them. Remember it and you will survive. Forget it, and the next call may not be answered so favorably." The predator's eyes met his again, and in that gaze was both promise and warning. The human had called and the apex had answered. Together they had rewritten what it meant to survive, to lead, and to endure. And in the silence that followed, the mercenaries understood something fundamental. Humanity was no longer just a fragile species at the edge of the galaxy. It was a force to be reckoned with, a species capable of alliances, loyalty, and power beyond comprehension. Elias Ward, healer and strategist, had not only survived, he had become legend. The predator rested at his side, coiled like living proof that a single human, guided by understanding and courage, could command awe, loyalty, and fear in equal measure. The stars beyond the station shimmered, silent witnesses to the rise of a human who had changed everything. The battle was over, but the story and the ripples of that story had only just begun.